Salam, everyone. Welcome to the Samawar Network. Tonight, our discussion is entitled Afghan-Americans and Trump USA. The Samawar Network, for those of you that don't know, my name is Omar, and it is an online live stream of Afghan-Americans who come together and discuss issues relevant to our community. You can check out our website, thesamawarnetwork.com, or our YouTube page to see some of the work that we've done in the past, some of the issues that we've discussed, and to get more information about us. So obviously with the title of this discussion, we know that it's about Donald Trump and the recent elections that happened in the United States. So on Tuesday night, he was elected president of the United States of America. Donald Trump is a pretty famous business and TV personality. For those of us, many of us know, was a campaign filled with a lot of toxicity and hate towards Muslims, towards Latinos, towards Blacks, people with disabilities, women, the LGBTQ community, and the list goes on. A lot of us woke up that next morning really shocked and from the results and really scared. We wanted to make sure that we came together and have an opportunity for our community to have this discussion and talk a little bit about how this impacts our community and what can we do moving forward. So we're going to spend a little bit of time reflecting, a little bit of time, and then hopefully try to focus our efforts on where we can go and some next steps for all of us. So we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves on the panel. Once again, my name is Omar from the Bay Area, calling in from Washington, D.C. currently. So we'll go ahead and Sabah, you'll go next.
Salam, my name is Sabah Mahir, and I'm calling from the Bay Area, California.
Salam, my name is Noura, and I'm calling in from Durham, North Carolina.
Salam, my name is Maria. I'm calling from Chicago.
Greetings, Ali from Bay Area.
Salam, the other Ali, and I'm calling in from Orange County.
Thank you, everybody. And so for those of you that are watching us, please feel free to comment, ask questions on Facebook, reflect on some of the things you're hearing. We hopefully want to make this an engaging dialogue. So if there's anything people want to have us address or, have their opinion, have their voice heard, please feel free to do so. The best way to do it is on the Facebook event page. I got some folks that are going to be checking that thing, texting me your questions. So we'll do our best to get to those things. But just to kind of get us started and get us rolling, I think just kind of processing a little bit of what the past few days have been like for people, because I know it's been a lot. And we're lucky to have Maria John from Chicago calling in and telling us a little bit about what it's been like for her. So if you want to go ahead and tell us what these past few days have been like for you.
Sure. Normally, if I was single, I think I'd probably done a lot more, but I am a mom, and it's been extremely hard. I think the first thing was telling my kids that Donald Trump actually won, because they're actually watching the election with me because they know about what's going on in school. So I think the first step was when my daughter says, "Oh my God, we're going to get kicked out of here, Mom. What are we going to do?" And mind you, she's only 7 years old. So, being and trying to compose myself when I heard it and trying not to cry and scream, but that was the most hardest thing, telling them and saying, no, everything's going to be fine. And the first time in my life, I actually didn't know what was going to happen. So that itself, trying to reassure them first, but in reality, I didn't know, I had any idea what was going to happen next. And honestly, I was very depressed for the first couple of days. And then, just this feeling of how those people in Syria felt, or, in third world countries where their kids are constantly in danger. It's like, I don't know what the next thing's gonna happen. Are they safe to go to school? So I didn't let my kids go to school the next day because I didn't want everyone talking about Trump, trying to give them a date. And yet when they went the next day, it was still going on. And my son came home saying everybody's talking about it. And, I haven't talked to the teachers yet, but, it's something that's ongoing and I'm not sure what to do. So the best thing I could do right now is just keeping a good composure and not trying to break down in front of my kids.
Yeah, I think, thank you for sharing that. I know, for you as a mom, and I think for a lot of people who are educators working with kids, I think you all have such a difficult task of trying to explain this to the younger folks who might not be able to always process everything that's going on. And for me, I think I'll chime in a little bit, but the past few days have been incredibly difficult and incredibly rough. And I think a lot of folks, in these marginalized communities have a really difficult time. I was completely in shock. I think like many other people, I had no idea, no clue that he might win. And it didn't even cross my mind at that point. And I think for the past few days, I've still been processing, and I think since that night, and I think maybe just today or the past 2 days or so has been to a point where I'm even prepared or ready or have the capacity to talk about what's next. And I don't know if a lot of people are at different parts of that spectrum, but I know for me, I'm just now getting to the point where I can start to think about what goes on next. Ali John, Ali Olomi, I know you last week had talked a little bit on our last discussion about the elections, about taking your grandfather to the polls and how it's this tradition that you all have. So I'd love to hear how that went and what happened with your grandfather and his reactions might have been to this.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So, for people who tuned in to the last one, I said that every election I take my grandfather. He votes in midterms. He votes in presidential elections. He's very involved, and he went and he got his little stub. He sat down and he cast his ballot painstakingly. It took us a good solid 45 minutes because he wants to make sure that he clicks on the right things. He votes on the things that he wants. He has me explain things for him. He's like, what was this measure again? Or what was this prop? What does this mean? We finished it. He got his sticker, took a little photo of him with his sticker because it was adorable. We went to lunch. And I could tell that throughout the lunch, he was actually very nervous. And he kept asking, like, what are his chances of winning? And this was tough for me because I was struggling myself. There's that pessimistic, cynical side of me that studied history for years that's going, absolutely, he's going to win. And then there's the optimistic, hopeful side of me that's going, of course not. There's no way he could possibly win. So I kept reassuring him, and I told him that I would tell him what the results were when they came in. I said, probably by 7 we'll know. By 8 at the latest, we'll definitely know. Parted ways. I went back to school to teach. Came back and we live streamed the elections, and as they were coming in, I was getting more and more nervous, and he kept calling, and I kept picking up and saying, I have to call you back, the elections aren't in. Even as the results were becoming very clear, it's because I didn't know what to say to him, and so I kept putting it off. I'm like, Baba John, I'll call you back. I'm not sure who won yet. But so I actually told him the next day. I called him, and he was very nervous, and he said something that was very interesting. I didn't think that this would happen here and not in my lifetime. And I think what he was responding to was the sense that we were now facing authoritarianism, something that he had experienced in his lifetime. And he was really nervous, and it was very heartbreaking for me to tell him that this happened in a country that basically voted and said people like him don't matter.
Thank you for sharing, Ali John. And wanted to start to think a little bit about, how did we get to this point? Like, we're all shocked. We're all, for many of us, we're shocked. We're in a state of kind of disbelief. But like, what led to this? What are some of the? I know, Nura, you study politics, right? Like that's your field. So if you want to just kind of like talk a little bit about, how did we get to this point where we have like Donald Trump, like saying that is just like crazy to me that we can even say that he's the president of the United States of America. So can I kind of shed some light a little bit on that for us to help us understand?
Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, the political scientists, the community is reeling from shock, and we're still processing it. And there's a lot of different things going on. And I'm going to touch on two. One, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. So there's this whole conversation on the Electoral College and, how votes actually lead into a candidate winning, right? And then second, you have decreased voter turnout. We're really bad about getting people out to the polls. So in general, in terms of why Clinton didn't win, that does affect her, right? But then you go and turn to, why do people support Donald Trump? And there are real palpable reasons around economic anxiety that the middle class have. So I'm not talking about the working class. I'm talking about people whose median income, the middle income is $64,000. That's your family household income. So white families who make that amount of money, you saw this huge surge of support for Bernie Sanders because he felt authentic, right? And in that same way, somehow Trump had that authenticity that these folks were latching on to. The uncomfortable reality about this economic anxiety, though, it is also mixed in with racial attitudes. You can't ignore it. You look at Michael Tesler at the Monkey Cage, look at all these things about how racial attitudes towards non-whites it's really mixed in with this economic anxiety. So you have these real issues around economics, but then you also have the real ugly issue of race and people's attitudes and concerns around that also complicate the picture. And I'll put some links up on our Facebook event page that kind of shows some graphs and some really cool work that's been done to sort of explain that. But those things really help explain Donald Trump's voter base, right? And I mean, he's even had women voting for him. And so for gender scholars, it's kind of really confusing to understand why women would support a candidate that has outright, advocated for assaulting women. And so this is a lot of different complicated things that we're trying to reel through. But the economic anxiety and racial attitudes, I think, are really important parts of trying to explain why people were voting for him.
And Ali, I know Ali Hakimi, you're someone who's on the ground doing a lot of work in the community. So tell us a little bit about what you've kind of seen, how you think we got here.
I thought that was a great analysis. The only thing that I would probably add is that the Democratic Party has historically sold out the people. And at every opportunity, they've proven themselves incapable of uplifting the class of individuals that was just talked about. And so I think the interpretation of Donald Trump, oddly, is one of the anti-establishment candidate. And so everyone spoke about how the Republican Party is going to go to shambles, and that just didn't happen because what people want is, I think, something completely different, and that's what came out. Oddly, like, he's not really the dude to give people that, but that's, I think, the other component that I'd probably add in.
If I can just add something to that, I think both of those analyses are pretty accurate, but I also see this in a kind of different lens, and that is that absolutely there is a sort of economic anxiety that's going on here, but I would say that Donald Trump's primary argument and his earliest argument is actually a cultural one. It has nothing to do with economics until relatively recently. Make America Great Again is a cultural claim. It is Make America White Again. It's middle class, middle America, white picket fence. That's what he's talking about. And he's talking about that anxiety. It's a demographic anxiety that says, look, America is changing. It's looking more brown. It's looking more black. For the first time, white people feel like we do. They look at the White House and they see someone that does not look like them. Make America White Again, in that sense, is much more of a cultural argument. Now, why does that resonate with people? Remember, and the reason I make this claims is that he didn't give an economic plan until 2 months ago. Right? So his first economic speech, his first tax speech was 2 months ago. So that's not to say that there aren't economic anxieties, but I think that primarily there is a cultural thing that's happening here. And the reason it resonates is because democracy is inherently flawed, and democracy is very, very vulnerable. We have been lied to over and over again by saying, through this hubris called American exceptionalism, that it can never happen here, that American democracy somehow won't fall apart, that it won't become Nazi Germany, it won't become Mussolini's Italy, that it won't become Venezuela, that we are somehow unique, and that's a lie. American presidential democracy is exceptionally vulnerable. And so what you have, when you have a breakdown of the politics, when partisanship takes over and you can't get anything done in Washington, along comes someone who says, I can fix this. And you have people who desire to be ruled and governed, who do not desire someone to say, hey, they don't want the technocrat. Oh, we just need to shift this policy. Oh, we need just this. They want the guy that goes, I can fix it and I can fix it for you. So we are uniquely vulnerable to authoritarianism as a democracy. And when you have this type of cultural claim that Donald Trump makes, it makes him very powerful as a candidate. And you have the support of white supremacy, patriarchy right behind him.
So we had a question. Somebody posed if the panel, everyone is a Hillary supporter, a Hillary Clinton supporter. And I think if anyone wants to kind of touch on that within the group as well. But Noura, you want to go ahead and...
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, so someone asked if everyone here on the panel is a Hillary Clinton supporter.
We all are supposed to go individually?
No, if you want to just, I think, Noura, you want to kind of touch on that a little bit?
I think that we're supporters of having a fair democracy. I think that's what everyone here is aligned with, is having a place where we all fit in. I don't think I personally did not work for the campaign, and I think Ali Hakimi just earlier said the Democratic Party has sold out people. So we clearly have folks here that are critics of what's going on in the establishment. That's not to say that people here did not support Hillary, but I think it is not an accurate representation of the kind of conversation we're trying to have right now.
And again, a lot of this focus of this conversation is really to, I think we want to address kind of a lot of the hate speech and a lot of the rhetoric that's been thrown out for today. And so this panel, this group of people are all people who are on varying ends of the political spectrum. We don't ask necessarily who is who people voted for, anything like that. We wanted to bring people together who can talk about these issues. So wanted to also address something like, again, with the hate speech and with so much of that going on. I think that's been more than the policies, has been the thing that's affected us the most. And Saba, I know you work for CARE, for Council of American Islamic Relations, civil rights coordinator. So you're on the ground, you're seeing a lot of what's happening. So tell us a little bit about what you're seeing has been the impact in the past few days.
Well, what I can tell you is that what has been happening on the ground is incredibly concerning and alarming to all civil rights organizations, not just to CARE. The number of hate incidents that we have seen just within less than 24 hours after it was announced that Donald Trump was president is tremendously high, and we haven't seen these kind of numbers in a really long time. Not even post-Orlando, not even post-San Bernardino did we see this level of hate incidents, and it is nationwide. And I'd like to interject real quick and say that prior to the elections, there was a nationwide sweep of FBI visits and FBI surveillance visiting the homes of law-abiding American Muslims, specifically targeting Afghan and Pakistani communities. And I have to reiterate that these are law-abiding citizens, and that those have only continued, and it's concerning for civil rights organizations like CARE, right? When we are worried about if that was occurring before a Trump presidency, then what type of measures are going to be taken in post-election with a Trump presidency. The types of hate incidents we've seen is across the Bay Area, one of the most progressive cities in the United States. Just within the span of a week, we've had dozens of incidents reported to our office. That's just what's being reported to our office, of Muslim girls being attacked at school, verbally and physically assaulted, their scarves being tugged off, of people at the grocery store being shoved around and being told to go back to where they came from. This is real. This is a reality. And as someone who's trying to process everything, it's been really difficult, but it's also hit my home. And I want to say that because this isn't just me observing things and working within the community. My own father became the victim of a hate incident in his own workplace. He's a physician, and a patient raised quite hell when they realized who he was and that he looked Muslim. And they did not want service with him, and they physically threatened his life. And that was a really traumatizing experience for our family, and we're still trying to process it. But this is just, and when I spoke to an attorney in Columbus, Ohio, within 15 minutes, he had a call back-to-back, 3 different incidents of Muslim Americans being attacked physically and verbally. So on the ground, this is what we're seeing. And we're really concerned about progress that we have made with in allyship with other progressive organizations to push forward and advance the interests of minority communities, of marginalized communities, of people of color. And with the list of 100 days that Donald Trump chooses to put forward in office, we're really worried about all of the clock being set backwards in time. So, yeah.
I mean, as far as it being legitimized, I mean, I think it started out even about last year when the elections kind of started with the primaries and everything. And there were incidents going on after San Bernardino, and, events happening at schools, and, with other stuff happening in the community, and I was well aware of it. So I assisted, some individuals within the school system because their kids were being attacked for being Muslim, or if there was specifically at that point. And now I think it's changed where the white supremacists feel that this is their nation, and any minority, whatever it may be, they have that right because of Donald Trump allowing them to say that they won't stop at any point. Where I'm seeing incidents at schools nationwide towards Latino kids, telling them that the wall is going to be built and for them to get kicked out no matter what because they're the true American. And with his, president-elect now, it's just going to make matters worse, where they feel they have the authority now to continue to do it. So is there any stopping to it? No, I don't. I think that regardless of what laws get passed through his legislation, I don't see the hate crimes or anything decreasing. It's going to increase no matter what he can or not do while he's in power.
And
Go for it. Saba, I think are you going to say something? Okay. Go for it. Okay. So then, Noura, go ahead and tell it. You had a really interesting post on Facebook, so share that with us.
So some folks may have heard about the safety pins. Of people were saying that if they're allies and they don't necessarily look like a minority, they should wear a safety pin. And then I started a post which got a lot of traction about whether or not we think that that's an appropriate measure. And I wanted to ask folks what they thought about the safety pin. And in general, what does it mean to be a good ally? Like, how do we step up for folks if we do pass as white and we can blend in and we don't sort of stick out in a subway or in a train or whatever? How do we help others?
So your question, I mean, I think for me, Noura, thank you for posing that question, and you got some really interesting responses on your Facebook post. But I don't know. I'm kind of torn with that because a part of me does feel like, okay, like it's a nice gesture, but then a lot of the criticism has been, well, what are people going to do after? But I think that small gesture, I think it can have an impact. I don't think it should be the end all be all of kind of people's activism, but it's hard for me to say that it's wrong. It's also hard for me to say like that's the thing, like that's what you need to do. But Saba, go ahead. You said you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I do see a lot of folks trying to reach out and trying to, and I struggle with it too, by the way, but there has been a group of, like, a significant number of people who are trying to find ways to be better allies and to be supportive. And one thing that I can say is that I've appreciated is actually reach out and actually ask, how can I be an ally, right? And I think there's different ways to be an ally, but one of the best ways is to listen and to be present, and to be there. And I know that we, like, just in our office, we've had a number of people call that are, not coming from an American Muslim community that want to help support the work that we do to advance the interests, right? And so ask, different people in different communities, how can I support you? And listen to them when they speak, because one of the things that we, like, people of color and minorities and women and all these people who have been attacked by the vitriol and rhetoric of Donald Trump and his likes, has been the fact that we don't feel heard. We don't feel like we're being heard, and we're feeling like we're constantly having to voice ourselves just to have a legitimate existence and to live in peace. And so listen, please listen, because we're not just speaking for the sake of speaking. We have something to say. So that's what I would say.
I'd like to add something. So this came up in my work too, and sounds like a reasonable idea. But my gut tells me that there's much greater things that need to be done, and I don't really need white people to be my ally. I need them to like have a national discourse about what whiteness is, and like deconstruct it amongst themselves. Like, I'll take care of mine, and me and my friends, we're good. But like, it's like the responsibility shouldn't be on us to make sense of all this. They need to make sense of their own self at this point. Like, this was, like Ali said, make America white again. And what the hell is whiteness? You know, like I don't need someone with a pin. Regardless, like we in the United States here are perceiving, at least I'm perceiving this as a reflection upon the society itself. So like I think more people are like Trump than we like I think are falsely telling ourselves. I think right now we all think we're righteous and we know everything and we're all like fighting for gender equality and like, oh yeah, I'm like, I have perfect politics. I think we're looking in the mirror right now. Trump is us, you know, and Trump is white people. And so I don't need someone with a pin. I need someone to like start really working. I'm cool. I'm gonna be cool walking down the street. I need you. I need not you, but I need white folks to like go with other white folks and have a conference of white folks to figure everything out.
And I can share a link. One of my friends from Oakland shared that there is a group of white folks trying to do just that and have those difficult conversations. And one of the most impressive things I've seen this week is one of my colleagues, she's anti-Trump, very much for women, not necessarily a Clinton fan, but very much anti-Trump stance, and her parents voted for Trump. And she has spent the last week having really deep, complicated conversations where they literally write out 2-page emails between her and her parents, where her parents are like, we're not racist, we voted for him for economic issues. And she's telling them, whether or not you're racist, you have legitimized a racist platform by electing him to be president. And for her to tell her parents this is not an easy conversation to have. And I've sort of witnessed her go back and forth, and it is a little step in some ways, but it starts at home. And if you, as a white person, live in a home where you're Trump supporters, you have to have the courage to have those difficult conversations. And then get out there and organize with folks, right? But I think both go hand in hand. And seeing that happen this week, I was like, it does take a lot of courage. You can just be like, oh, that's just my crazy mom, and excuse it. Or you can confront it and be like, let's seriously talk about it. If we can't talk about it, we're going to start emailing and figure this out.
One question, or like, I guess something that I am thinking about in particular with like our community. We talk a lot about, I mean, with TSN, I think we try to have these discussions on, you know, supporting other marginalized communities, but like, you know, like, let's be real, like when the Supreme Court decides to, or Pence or Trump, however this happens, but when they decide to repeal, like, you know, the same-sex marriage laws, or, you know, those kinds of things, when the issue of bathrooms for the trans community comes up, and they're asking for our support, and we talk a lot about allyship and getting together with other communities, with other marginalized communities. But I guess my question is, in particular with that issue, like, where are we going to stand, like, you know, when that comes up? Like, where are you going to be when that in particular community is asking for your help and for you to step up for them? Because right now we're asking everyone else to do it for us, but where are we going to be in that moment? And I think that's an important reflection I think we all need to have. All of us do. So in particular with the Afghan and Muslim community, I can think about. And Saba, go ahead, or yeah. Did you have something, or Ali Hakimi?
Are you posing that question to
Sure,
us?
I am posing.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, I would say that the fact that you have to ask that question tells me where our community is, and that we have a lot of work to do on ourselves. The fact that you have to ask that question, like, it hurts me to hear that question being asked, and it tells me that we have a lot of work and we really need to look inward. And when we ask that question, how did we get here? We really have to ask ourselves, how did we get here? Because we were doing something wrong too. We have issues within our own community that we're still battling with, and you have to ask this question: what are we going to do when DOMA might get repealed, and where do we stand when we're asked by the LGBTQ community, like, will Afghans be there to step up and to help? If we are asking people to show up for ourselves, we have to show up for other communities. And it's not, and it shouldn't be because it's a two-way street and we should be doing it. It's because this is the essence of humanity. This is the essence of humanity. And I don't know about everybody else, but my humanity is bound up by all of this. And I've had a lot of frustrations in general when I think about how we got here as a community. And it's because I don't think people have been showing up. I don't feel like the community has been stepping up when they need to. And maybe it shouldn't be, I don't know, like, and I'm definitely like really frustrated, but I have this frustration that not enough is being done by the greater Afghan-American community as a whole, holistically. And I will say this, and I'll say this about the Muslim community too. There's a lot of work, because that question you just asked, I would ask the same question of the American Muslim community, because that's a problem.
One thing that I wanted to say about this is, at least with this Trump presidency, and I mean for the last year and a half, however long these damn elections go for, it's going to be an opportunity for all of us to see these issues over and over again, make mistakes, but like learn and like work with folks. In some ways, I really don't think the Hillary Clinton administration would have changed society very much. It would have been a continuation of the status quo. Whereas this guy, who's a serial offender, sexual assault, rape, he's a racist, he's all those things, you know, he's a demagogue. This will give us kind of a crash course in some of the possible activism that we'll need to embark upon, and, you know, the bonds we need to make, and the like political consciousness that we need to evolve with.
So last night on Saturday Night Live, Dave Chappelle gave a really powerful, interesting monologue. And at the end of his monologue, sort of to kind of continue what you're saying, Alijan, at the end of his monologue, he said, you know, Trump is president now, and I'm willing to work with him. Trump, are you willing to work with us? And that's sort of how he ended it. And I wondered, given Chappelle's statement, do you agree? Would you be willing to work with Trump?
No.
No.
Very clearly no.
Jeez.
Look, you have a proto-fascist demagogue. Are you going to give him a 6-month head start? You got someone who said, hey, I'm going to go shoot your family. Do you wait and find out if he's going to shoot your family or not, or if he's just joking? No, you stop his ass. That's what you do. Look, Donald Trump ran an openly misogynistic, openly bigoted, xenophobic campaign of demagoguery, and America rewarded him with the presidency. If there is not a political cost, then that sends a clear message that the Afghan community, that the Muslim community, that women, that people of color, that minorities, it's open season on them. There needs to be a political cost. And guess what? The system isn't going to do it for us. It's up to us to make sure that every freaking inch he takes costs him. We call up our politicians, our representatives, and we tell them that if you work with him, we will support a primary challenger. We make it very clear that it's none of this like, oh, well, if he proposes something that's kind of reasonable, we'll work with him. Well, guess what? That's what tyrants and demagogues do. They start off with a policy that everyone can get on board with. Oh, that sounds good for the middle class. And once they have the political capital, then they do the unthinkable. So you stop him before he even gets a chance. You let him know that every inch he takes, there are people that are standing in his way. So no, we don't work with him, and we fight tooth and nail every single step.
I have to echo what Ali says, like a hardcore, okay? And I will add one more thing, and that is this entire election cycle and this election season has been so draining, but what's even worse about it, and everybody watched the same news that I did, and everybody probably saw the same things on Facebook that I did, but what started out as a joke eventually turned into a president-elect. This isn't a joke anymore. This is not someone to not take seriously, okay? And they're like, and to work with this, I don't see that as an option. I just don't, because, and one of the things that I've been hearing a lot is he probably won't be able to carry out the things that he said he would. And, you know, and that kind of reminds me of when everybody thought that he wouldn't make it out of 20 people who were running for the Republican Party. Came out the GOP nominee, and there was a lot of people who didn't think he would make it and win this election, but guess what he did? Joke's on us. There's nothing to not take seriously here anymore. We can't afford that. We just cannot. So, and by the way, to everyone who's tuning in, you know, this is a live stream, and we do have some guest panelists that are joining in on the call as well, and so we'll introduce them as they come. But yeah, and I think we're going to transition to see what Afghans in particular, what Afghans in particular in the community can do. So I think Salman John, you just joined us. You're calling in, I believe, from LA. Do you want to quickly say hi and address the community?
Hey guys, can you hear me all right? Hey, I'm Salman. I'm calling in from Los Angeles. Thank you guys so much for having me on here. I mean, you guys have already said so much of what I'm feeling, which is a mix of like anger, it's rage, it's hurt, it's sadness. I keep going back and forth with a ton of different emotions, but if we're talking action items, I think there's a couple different ways that we can go. I feel like, can you guys hear me better this way? All right, I see some ears getting closer. All right, sorry, y'all. Okay, I feel like Afghan-Americans, I think the focus for our community for a while has been to unite us, because we've been so insular and we've also been so fractured as a community. We have to continue the work of uniting as a community and supporting one another, but we also have to start breaking out of that insular bubble and start expanding and being allies to other communities. You guys have already touched base on it on the call, but we really have to be better allies to movements like Black Lives Matter. We have to be better supporters of the LGBTQ community. We have to step up for causes that are not our own, like Standing Rock. We also have to tell the people in our lives that we care about, whether they're Afghan or not, how they can help us. I know it's not our responsibility, but it will help. I have some, just as an anecdote, I have some white coworkers who I'm the only Muslim, basically. I'm like basically at work. I work at a law firm. It's 115, 120 people. I think I'm like the first Afghan guy to ever work there. And so a lot of my coworkers were worried for me when it came time after the elections. So they actually reached out to me, and I appreciate it. They're my white coworkers. But when they reached out to me and they came up to me, they basically said, it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. We'll be fine. He probably doesn't mean a lot of what he's saying. And I knew that their intentions were to help, right? And I couldn't fault them for that. What I did tell them is like, look, man, I hope you're right. And I pray that you're right. But at the end of the day, it's also so easy for you to say that because you're white. Like, your identity was not challenged. Your existence was not put into question. Your belonging in this country was not ever up for debate. And so I said, you know how you can help us is by acknowledging white privilege when you're among your circles, because maybe my voice as a brown man doesn't carry enough water or weight, whether that's fair or not. It might be the reality. And I need you to step up among your circles and say, look, that's racist. Look, that's xenophobic. Look, that's sexist. Do your part, because I'm going to do my part, but I'm going to need the help of my white brothers and sisters, my allies. So among Afghans, I think we got to step up and we need to work with others, but I think we have to also have uncomfortable conversations with our friends and coworkers.
Also, you know, moving forward, besides the Afghan community, which I think we really need to get involved and help out until the next election as well, and also ongoing topics, but the Muslim community and all minority communities in general, whenever you see something that's, you know, unjust, which we're going to probably see a lot happening in the next couple of years, we have to stand up for everyone and stick up there, because, you know, when you walk in a store and you see that Mexican worker, you know, working whatever minimum wage or cash, and you know that there's a high liability for them to be deported, you know, we have to stick up for others as well, just like we want people to stick up for us. And I think that's what I've been seeing a lot in the communities, and everyone speaking for each other. You know, people messaging me directly like, don't worry, Maria, you know, we got your back. Yeah, Illinois is a democratic state, but you know, if anything unjust happens to you, your sister's right behind me. And they're not Muslim, you know, they're non-Muslims. And I think moving forward, we gotta assist everyone. And then also for individuals in our community that have language barriers, help them out. You know, there's gonna be things that happen to them and they're probably gonna be too scared to speak up. And the first and most, and I probably did get very emotional talking about this, but it hurts, you know, when you see them because they're so afraid. Oh, am I going to be deported? Oh, you know, I'm Afghan, I'm Muslim, I can't speak up. No, don't say anything at all. They're afraid to even speak up. So I think we have to motivate them and help them and let them know that there are organizations, there's people in their community, you know, whatever it may be, we have to take that next step. And every time there is something new happening with this, you know, with the new president, you know, we have to sit there and speak up, protest peacefully. And I think that's the worst thing that I've been seeing a lot is these riots. And then, you know, automatically the Trump supporters are like, well, there you go. This is why we don't, you know, look at you guys, how you're responding. I think peaceful protesting is the #1 thing that we have to, you know, advocate, and hopefully everyone understands that, because there was a recent video in Chicago specifically. They used, you know, the topic of Trump to hit some white male, because in reality, he just was asking them for car insurance. So I think we have to advocate on both sides, you know, let's protest peacefully and be there for each other, but in a very, you know, peaceful manner.
Like to chime in and say that, like, in addition to all of that, support the local organizations, support the grassroots movements, the people that are on the ground. These movements require manpower, woman power, but it also requires money. Like, these things don't have, people can only volunteer and sacrifice their bodies for so long, and these movements can only go so far. So there's definitely ways to help in that. If you can't show up, then donate $1. It goes a long way. And yeah, join the movements on the ground. I will say to the item on the protests, like, I'm sure people come from a wide range of backgrounds in terms of how they use their activism. And yes, some of these protests have become violent, quote unquote violent. But I want to acknowledge the fact that we live in a culture that suppresses anger. And an American society particularly suppresses anger a lot. And, you know, that can occur in the workplace where we're suppressing our anger and we're not letting out our rage. And so what we're seeing on the streets, I don't see it as violence. I see it as rage. People are outraged, hurting, and they want to be heard, because they've been trying in peaceful ways. And and Ali John, you can talk to this more on the history of it, but any type of progress that's been made by people, that has been pushed forward by people of color and by minorities, that we reap the benefits of, it didn't just come by peaceful means. There were radical aspects to it, and sometimes that's needed. And I think that's what we're seeing, is that people aren't taking it anymore. They are letting out their anger. They are letting out their rage because they want to be heard, because they want to see things manifest out of that.
Ali Hakimi, go ahead. You there?
Oh yeah, totally. So if we're talking about protesting now, one thing that I want to highlight is the fact that, like, anytime I've ever been out in the streets, and I've been out in the streets multiple times since Trump has become the president, the people who are violent are the police. They are the only people shooting at people. They got beanbags. They got flashbang grenades. They got tear gas. It's a war zone down there. And the only people who are ready to fight are the police. They have all the weaponry. They have the monopoly on violence. They can arrest whoever they want. They have photos of people that they want to snag, and they'll snag those people. So for me, I would like to maintain sort of solidarity with those people who are out in the streets fighting in whatever way they see fit. Whether that's, like, I don't know, tomorrow around Lake Merritt, they're all going to hold hands, or today they all went to Lake Merritt, hold hands and surround the lake. And I didn't go to that. It didn't appeal to me, but I'm going to be in solidarity with them, just in the same way that last night people marched through Berkeley and, you know, ripped up some banks and, you know, did other things that the media likes to frame as violence, but property does not have life. Bodies experience violence. The police perpetuate violence on bodies. I just someone who has kind of the bigger issue for me is to make sure that we move forward as a group and fight for liberation. And at times that might mean sort of standing up to a violent state. And that often is ugly from the other end towards us.
One of the things that I'm kind of, as we're talking a little bit about like next steps and kind of moving forward, I'm having a really hard time kind of figuring out what the best way is. I've just come to this, and this is kind of a reflection, not necessarily some pointers for everyone, but like, I feel like I've spent some of my work involves, working with students on, diversity and social justice and those kinds of things. And I felt like I've tried to meet people where they're at and just, get to them where, try to almost sometimes soften things up. And to get to the point where we're at today, these past few days, I've just been thinking like, damn, like what, like I'm almost like lost hope of like, what's the point? Like I'm almost, I used to think that, I don't know. I guess I'm starting to become a little bit more unapologetic in some senses of like, maybe we need to stop always coddling people and just kind of bringing the truth. And I've just having these reflections a lot in these past few days. So just wanted to kind of bring that up. And Ali John, I think you were going to chime in, or Saba.
Yeah, I can go. To Saba's point, that protests is not just a long tradition in America. It's really the only thing that's moved things in America. Legislation always follows activism first. It's people on the ground that move things, and then the legislation follows. This is a country that was born on the back of slaves, that was bathed in the blood of genocide, that decided that you were not a citizen and could not vote and did not have rights based off of the color of your skin, your gender, your sexuality, or your status as an immigrant. And those are the ugly sides of this America. But this is also the country that overthrew a tyrannical king, that cast down McCarthyism and ended Jim Crow. And those only happened because people resisted. And one of the things that we really need to do is we need to move away from just raising awareness, which is really good online, and actually get out there, making communities, making friendships, making alliances, and working with people across the board. Because the greatest thing that we can give Donald Trump is apathy. If we do nothing, right? If you're waiting around for the social structures, the checks and the balances to keep him in place, we're in for a rude awakening. We have had a grueling primary season that should have weeded him out, and it nominated him. We had 15 months of a campaign that should have revealed his incompetence, and it led to his presidency. We had an electoral college that should have stopped him as a demagogue, but it made him the president. Look, this is not politics as usual. If he is unable to ban Muslims, unable to build a wall, unable to deport things, it's not because the system checked him. It's because the people resisted. And that's why we need to be out there.
And tonight we have some rotating panelists kind of coming in. So Ahmad Jan, I know you just joined us. For those of you that don't know, Ahmad Rafah he ran for city council here in the Bay Area. So I think you kind of, as an Afghan-American, a lot has been reported on you. We posted some articles and some of the work that you've done. And I think you kind of help us kind of realize the importance of local elections and local politics in affecting change. So right now, in this point of this conversation, we've been talking a little bit about kind of ways to move forward and like next steps. And would love to hear kind of from you on the local level, like what are some things we can do? How can we work to make sure that our rights, the hatred and all those things don't come to life? They already have, but don't have policies behind them. So just kind of sharing with us a little bit about what it's like for you being on the local level, and what are some things that we can do as Afghan-Americans.
Sure. Thank you, Omar John. Salam, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I've been running around all day. Just a quick background. My name is Ahmad, 27 years old. Live in the Bay Area here. Spent most of my career in government and politics. Most recently worked for Congressman Mike Honda as a advisor to him on foreign affairs and civil rights. And I just ran for Santa Clara City Council. Was not victorious, but my disappointment was quickly overshadowed just 15 minutes later by learning that Donald Trump presidency. So, very determined to get back into the game. As far as, what we can do at a local level, I mean, a lot of the promises he made during his campaign are actually feasible. I mean, we've really extended the executive power over the last several presidencies. Something we should take serious. The individual talking before me, I'm sorry I didn't get your name, is right. We have to be battle, the types of policies he want with some type of apathy. So I mean, I've been in this for almost a decade, and my hope was that Hillary won. I could step away, kind of take a breath from things. But now I'm going to fight harder than ever. Some of the things that we can do is just be political. Just get involved in your community. Get involved in sports. The more people know someone from our community, whether we're Muslim or Afghan or any type of minority, the better off we're going to be in this country. So just, I would say, don't withdraw because of this result. Don't feel complacent because of this result. Don't feel worse. Get involved even more. I could expand on that, but that's just a general outline of what I think we should do at this point.
Ahmad John, can you please give some examples of how Afghans can be more civically engaged? When you say get involved more, what does that look like? What does that mean, especially at the local level?
So, like I said, if you're a young man, go play some sports. If you're a parent, get involved in the PTA. Get involved, as a tutor at your school. If you were more politically inclined, support a candidate that supports our causes, or run for office. Get involved in the party. If you are, like I said, politically inclined, support a candidate. You could do that by fundraising for him. You could get that by organizing a canvas for him. One of the more important things, there are small minority groups in this country that do very well. The Vietnamese community, for example, got 3 or 4 of their own people from their community elected here in the Bay Area, in Milpitas and Berryessa, that's North San Jose. But our community, we don't vote and raise as a block. We don't advocate as a block. So we're a young community, so I'm not going to throw us too much under the bus, but that is what we need to start doing. Doing things as a group, doing it together, fundraising, advocating, things like that.
And I want to add on to that point. Thank you, Ahmad John. It's commendable that you're back up and running already, and you're looking forward to what's next. And I want to say that I think that that's something that you feel, and you're not alone. I feel that myself as well. I think we see that Donald Trump's supporters are incredibly fired up by what's been going on, by his election. It's almost legitimized white supremacy and all of the policies that they believe in. But I feel like inversely, so many people in our community are also fired up, and we're so ready to continue working, and we're so ready to get to work for many of us who have never been involved in the past. So I think this is a really important time. It's almost a tipping point for our community, for people to say, you know what, like, I've either been involved, but we haven't branched out to other communities enough, or I haven't gotten involved, and this is my opportunity to. So I think it's really a chance for us to step up and do that. And to your point about getting involved in different sports and getting involved in politics and so on, I mean, that might sound simple, but sometimes things that simple really can be a step towards the right direction, because our civic engagement is what allows people to see Afghans in their community getting involved, Muslims in their community getting involved, immigrants, and so on. And in doing so, we're no longer this other, we're no longer this monster that they've never met before. They can actually place face to a name. And so the more we do that, I think the more we can one by one combat racism, which isn't our responsibility solely, but it is our burden.
To kind of echo in, one of the biggest questions I've been asking myself the last few days is, who are my people? And when we talk about allyship, we're talking about, oh, Afghans. I have to be honest, my people are African-Americans, They are LGBTQ people. When I see myself, I don't just see myself as an Afghan, as a Muslim. They're my people too. And I think a lot of it has to do with, especially for the African-American community, they made my freedoms possible. So if, for example, Saturday mornings I go on a run on a trail that's pretty unsafe for women, I deliberately park in Durham segregated. I park in the all-black neighborhood and I start my run there because I know I'm safe there. When people walk by me in the neighborhood, they say "Assalamu alaikum" to me, even though they're not Muslim. They're my people, they have my back. So when I think about organizing right now, Trump may be in office, but on a local level, there are city council people. There are congressmen, congresswomen like Keith Ellison that have our back. And we need to hold them accountable. We need to set up meetings with them, with our people. So my people are the people in Durham, and I'm trying to organize with them to hold my local people accountable to keep me and the community safe. So I think this allyship, really we have to ask ourselves, who are your people? And think not just about organizing within Afghans, but really psychologically open your mind to who your people are and broaden what that means and what family means to you and what community means to you.
So there's a question that was posed on Facebook from our friend Idris, asking about what can the youth and young adults study, like books, articles, publications, etc., to become more knowledgeable, effective, and involved with the U.S. Democratic process. If anyone wants to kind of talk a little bit about what are some resources that people can utilize. One of the Ali's want to take that on. I think you're nominated here. Let's go, Ali O. Go for it.
Sure. I think there's a lot of different books you can read about this. Shameless plug for my discipline of history. Please, for God's sake, read history books. We're entering into an era that is quite openly proto-fascist, and we need to understand how the 1930s looked and how the left organized against fascism in particular, if we're going to understand what's currently going on. What makes American fascism is kind of unique is that it talks and speaks like an economic populist, but is actually a kleptocrat. So you have a billionaire who's talking about working for the middle class or the working class. So it is somewhat unique, but I think history is really, really important. In terms of books for political science, Democrats for Realists is a really, really great book. Global Rectificatory Justice is a fantastic book. And I would say Black Skin, White Mask by Frantz Fanon is a fantastic book to understand race and colonialism.
Yeah, that's I like what you just added in at the end. I think Fanon is a really important place to start, and I think that actually a lot of authors who are experiencing either in the past or currently the African diaspora actually gives us a lens into our own diaspora, as well as just like kind of contextualizing this push towards white supremacy on the national level. I personally don't think that like reading about political science books, I study political science. I don't think participating in the democratic system, at least the one that's rooted in Western and white supremacy and built on slavery and genocide, I don't think we're going to get any answers there. I think that it comes from the outside. I think it was mentioned by Ali before, and you mobilize and you push from the margin. So I really like. I remember years ago I read this book called "The Spirit of the Whirlwind." No, Uses of a Whirlwind, and it talked about like how social movements operate and kind of I think you can learn from previous social movements through that book and how organizing operates, how to organize collectively. But yeah, I would say across the board, people need to study about gender theory, whether that's Judith Butler, bell hooks, Frantz Fanon. People need to get educated about everything right now, because it's all going to be under attack, and it's been under attack. I mean, Trump is not that surprising if you've been paying attention. It's just gonna be in the fast lane at this point. So I'm just trying to look at my own bookshelf, and I would start there. Baldwin. If you want to mix in some literature, some novels, Baldwin is a great place to go. but people need to study, 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 and stay active.
I would also chime in and add that on top of like the literature and the theoretical literature that's out there, which, you know, has already been mentioned, and there's just so much, a wealth of information out there. Joining different organizations, different groups of people, whether that's like a Black Lives Matter organization, La Raza, if you actually, you know, you join these different groups and these different organizations and you attend meetings, you'll actually develop a language to speak through. And I think that that's a challenge that people face sometimes when they're just trying to learn about these issues. They may feel a particular way about it, but they don't know how to communicate it. And I struggle with that, like in my youth and when I was in college. And what helped me through that was joining different student, not joining to different student organizations, attending different meetings. If you're the youth, there's community organizations that are out there. So look them up, see how you can get involved, attend these meetings. And then there's also, you know, there's a lot that you can learn just by seeing different forms of art that's out there as a form of resistance. And one thing that always helped me was poetry, Def Jam poetry. There's so much, right? I mean, history is really, really important, and I'm not even trying to say to discredit it, but a lot of times history is written by the people who are in positions of power. And so if you want to hear from the voices of the people who are not in power, I will tell you, you can find it in poetry through spoken word. So check that out, and I would be happy to put out some suggestions out there.
Yeah, I think that the beauty of this panel is that we have different perspectives, and I respectfully disagree with folks that say that working within the system may not be productive. I think that there is a place for us within the system. When you have Black politicians working in Congress, when you have people on the local level, there are things that can get done. That's my perspective as a more conservative leaning political scientist. And I think that whatever we choose to do, inaction is not an option. It is your choice, it is your agency. You can utilize that agency to bring change, whether it's pushing the system or getting involved in local elections and the process there. And I wanted to sort of like share this quote that the Dalai Lama wrote an op-ed the other day in the New York Times, and he ended his essay saying that what unites the two of us in friendship and collaboration is not shared politics or the same religion. It's something simpler. It's a shared belief in compassion and human dignity and the intrinsic usefulness of every person to contribute positively for a better and more meaningful world. And the Trump administration threatens to take that away from us. And I think it's a powerful reminder for us that we are all useful, and we all need to come together to maintain and uplift our human compassion and dignity, which is so much inherent against sort of what he's doing. So we need to push back, and that's sort of like the thoughts that give me comfort in such a trying time.
Thank you so much for that, Nura. I think just reiterating what you said, the main takeaway that I got from that is like inaction is really just not a choice, and I think that we can all kind of, hopefully all of us can agree on that. You know, thank you all for joining us tonight. This was, I think, a great opportunity for us to hear what folks have been thinking, what folks have been saying. And I think a lot of people, again, like we're saying, still processing. You might still not be ready to start working, to start action, and that's okay. And I think it's important for all of us in this time to really take care of ourselves and make sure that we're doing well. And you know, whenever you're ready for that action, make sure that it happens. And whatever route that you take, you know, we got to work together, stick together, and hopefully, you know, utilize the resources here on the Samovar Network, reach out to folks that you might meet through the Facebook page, whatever it may be. But thank you all again for joining us tonight. Wishing you all the best. And please check out our website, YouTube page for more videos and other things to find out a little bit more about us. Okay. Thank you all. Have a good night. Bye-bye.